Peer Through Time, part 6 of 7. Now that we've already talked about how buyback works, we ought to talk real quick about how to make a buyback more effective and how to get as much as possible out of it. And really, one of the best ways to do that is to reduce the cost. If this is a multiplayer deck, you want people on your side, so you want to play cards like Helm of Awakening. I mean, you're already paying Sapphire Medallion. Reduces all your blue spells to cost 1 less. Helm of Awakening makes everything cost 1 generic mana less, including your artifacts, but it's everyone who gets the ability. With this in play, people kind of want to keep you around. Similarly, you could play Arcane Melee. Instant sorcery spells cost 2 less to cast. Combine this with either of these two, and your buyback spell is costing 2 or 3 to buy back. Because it's part of the spell's cost, you actually end up paying them the buyback cost for free, which is incredible. That's fantastic. And then there's a card that does just buyback cost, and that's Memory Crystal. All buyback costs are reduced by 2. If you got all of these out, you're reducing your cost of your spells by 6, which is ridiculous. You don't need that much, but it's nice to have. In fact, mana is very, very important in this type of deck. So let's talk about what does get you more mana and more mana. I already took out 3 lands in the deck to put in Soul by Excavations. This is the original Scry card. Comes into play, you sacrifice an untapped island, it taps for 1/1 blue, 1 tap, look at the top card of your library, and you can put that card on the bottom of your library. So you pay 1 and tap, and this taps for 2 mana, and you sacrifice the land. So essentially it's 3 mana. 3 mana to do that Scry effect. But you can do it with Teferi's ability. Get that, untap 4 permanents, and then you can use this. Do this at the end of your opponent's turn, just before you know you're going to draw. If you didn't use the mana for anything, it's something my father used to call a spare change type of card. You have the extra mana at the end of someone's turn. Say you didn't have to do a buyback spell, you didn't have to counter something. This is what you do. Along those same lines, you want lots and lots of mana. You love to have lots and lots of devotion to blue. Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx. This is one of the more expensive cards to go into this, but trust me, it's worth it. It's not a Tolarian Academy, it's not a Gia's Cradle, but in about 4 or 5 years, when people realize how good it is, it's going to be worth more. Or at the very least, it'll be up there. So think about getting one of these while you still can, while they're still relatively inexpensive. And then one of the lands I took out to play, Traumatic Visions. It's a 5 mana counterspell, but it has basic land cycling. So if it's in your opening hand with 2 other lands, well, you've got your 3rd land. On the other hand, later on in the game, when you draw it, you think, well, at least I didn't draw that land. You still get a counterspell out of it. So that's something to think about as well. 99 card deck, which would you rather draw? The Traumatic Visions on your 13th turn, or an island? If you're like me, you want the Traumatic Visions. That sounded weird. Anyway, let's talk about things that come into play. Peregrine Drake. It's not a Palinchron, but it's really good. It's 5 mana for 2/3 flyer. When it comes into play, untap up to 5 lands. This is where things like Coral Atoll and the Soul by Excavations come in, or even the Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. You suddenly can boost your mana up quite a bit just by playing it in, among other things. Archaeomancer. When it comes to play, you return an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. This works very well with the buyback spells. If somebody makes you discard it, or you couldn't quite get that buyback cost, this will help make up the difference. Frost Titan locks down a permanent. Do it twice a turn, attack with it, then do something to... well, we'll talk about that in a few moments. Comes to play 6/6 for 6. That's incredible for blue to have that kind of mana efficiency. Phyrexian Ingester. This is an excellent card. 7 mana for a 3/3, but it gets rid of commanders. Gets rid of commanders very well. Good thing to note, though, when it gets rid of a commander and it goes to exile, instead it gets put in the command zone. So you don't get the plus, but come on, 7 mana, and it's whenever it enters the battlefield. Similarly, Ixodron works with your morph creatures to turn them face down again. This does a lot. I mean, it doesn't target, it gets rid of Uriel, hexproof decks, it gets rid of a lot of different things. And it doesn't affect your commander because it's a planeswalker. Although that should be obvious by this point. And then Seagate Oracle. The roll-up ability for Teferi is similar to the ability. Immediately you play it, look at the top 2, put 1 in your hand, 1 on the bottom of your library. Same as Teferi. So that's something to do the same effect, a little bit cheaper, gets you closer to the cards you need. When it comes to that kind of card, what do you do to get them in and out of the battlefield? That's where these come into play. I mean, Nefalia's Smuggler is 1 for 1/1, 4 mana to exile, but it's done at instant speed. It's actually a really decent card. Nobody's going to waste creature removal to get rid of it. I mean, they'd rather get rid of something else, but with this in play and 4 mana untapped is as good as a repeatable counterspell. Use it on your Frost Titan. Then it goes out, comes back in, locks something else down for a turn. Similarly, Conjurer's Closet can do it as well. Pulls it out, brings it back into play under your control, and you have the enters the battlefield effect. This is especially useful when you gain control of something until end of turn. You stack the trigger so that it leaves play. When it comes back in, it's treated as a new permanent, and it's already under your control, even if you don't own it. Permanently, it's under your control. So think about stuff like that. Now, if you're going to play buyback and you're going to pay all these cards that give you extra mana and come into play and all these different effects, you want as many things coming into play as possible. But you also want as many cards in your hand as possible. Buyback works with Venser's Journal. Have no maximum hand size, you gain 1 life for each card in your hand. Excellent with Whispers of the Muse, excellent with buyback in general. But it pales in comparison to this other card. Talrand, the Sky Summoner. 2/2 for 4. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, put a 2/2 blue Drake creature token onto the battlefield. Oh, gosh. Will wonders never cease? I mean, this could almost have been the commander for the deck, although I really like Teferi. This is a good thing just to have in general in the deck. It works with buyback so beautifully. There's 6 buyback spells in the deck. And with all these effects that are reducing the costs of your counter spells and other things, it's a no-brainer. Talrand's a great addition to this deck. Might have been the commander, but he doesn't have to be. So that, think about all the fun things you can do with all those 2/2 Drakes popping out. People won't want you to counter their spells for more than one reason. I'm sorry, I'm fanboying for this. I just love this deck. This was the first mono blue commander deck I ever built was Talrand. And it's just a good card. And then we've got a few more minutes before I'm going to stop the video and upload it. So let's talk about what to do with your mana, how you really get to capitalize on some of the abilities you're using. And that's to use things like gain control of target permanent cards. The original target permanent card was Confiscate. This was around before there ever was a Planeswalker card type. So 6 mana again, and you control the enchanted permanent. You get their land, get their artifact, get their enchantment, get their creature. It's 6 mana, that's a lot, but you control that enchanted permanent. So then you realize you can start gaining control of their Planeswalker. That's where his emblem is going to be very powerful, because you'll be able to use all of the Planeswalkers you get control of. You'll be able to use them on everyone else's turn. So, think about how awesome that will be. And if that wasn't awesome enough, you also get cards that do the same effect with slight variation. Volition Reigns, same 6 mana, 3 blue and 3, gain control of the permanent, and then if the permanent is tapped, untap it. You control that permanent. Works just the same way as Confiscate, but works very well with the Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. And then sometimes you think, well, what if you try to gain control of a permanent and they do something to get rid of it? That's why you have Take Possession. 7 mana. That's a lot. I'm not gonna mince words here. That's a lot of mana. With Teferi out and his -1, untap 4 target permanents, you can float the mana and you can cast this. And it's split second. That means they can't respond as long as you have this on the stack. You control the enchanted permanent. This is 3 Planeswalkers you could have right here and right now. Or 3 creatures, or 3 artifacts, or 3 enchantments, or 3 lands. But don't take people's lands. Or at least don't take one person's lands. That's too much. Finally, the last one in this, and it's a foil, so let's look at how pretty that is. Dream Leash, 3 and 2 blue mana. You can only play it on a tapped permanent, but then you control the enchanted permanent. That means the permanent has to be tapped when you cast this. That's all. And that's really not that difficult to do. You can use the Mind Games to tap down a land, a creature, or an artifact, and then you use this Mind Gaze to tap it down on their turn. Use this to gain control of it. Let somebody tap any number of things. I thought about playing a card that would allow you to tap a Planeswalker, and that would have worked very well as well. But in general, this is a good card. You may want to think about whether or not you want to put an Arcane Lighthouse in this type of a deck, because Hexproof, you'd be able to take a Geist to Saint Draft or any number of really, really good creatures. But yeah, we managed to go all over the place in this. We talked about comes into play effects with Conjurer's Closet. We talked about mana with Soul of Excavations and Nykthos and Traumatic Visions. And we talked about decreasing the cost of your spells and using those spells to great effect with Venser's Journal and Talrand Sky Summoner. And that's 10 minutes. I have to call it quits here. But this was part 6 of Peer Through Time. I hope you learned something from this really, really quick video. And maybe it inspired you to play some of these cards in your decks. Hope so. Have fun. Good draw.